For more than 40 years, the public was told a simple explanation for the death of Natalie Wood, a tragic accident at sea. The story was repeated so often that it hardened into accepted truth. Yet for many who followed the case closely, something never quite fit. Natalie Wood was not just a beloved actress. She was a cultural symbol, someone whose life had been carefully documented since childhood. When questions surfaced about the night she disappeared, they weren't driven by rumor alone, but by inconsistencies, delays, and details that resisted easy explanation. Over time, witnesses revisited their memories, records resurfaced, and investigators acknowledged unanswered questions. This isn't a story about rewriting history, but about understanding why it never fully settled. The mystery surrounding Natalie Wood endures not because of conspiracy, but because silence, fear, and unresolved doubt left too much in the dark. The night that changed everything. On November 29, 1981, the body of 43-year-old Natalie Wood was found floating in the waters near Catalina Island. She had been spending Thanksgiving weekend aboard a yacht with her husband, actor Robert Wagner, co-star Christopher Walken, and the vessel's captain. News of her death sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Natalie Wood was known worldwide for films like Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story, and Miracle on 34th Street. To the public, her life seemed complete: success, beauty, and renewed marriage stability. Yet the circumstances surrounding her final hours raised immediate questions. She was discovered wearing clothing inconsistent with swimming, and the weather that night was cold and rough. Authorities initially ruled the death accidental, but even in the earliest reports, gaps existed. Those gaps would quietly echo for decades, refusing to fade. A weekend that turned tense. The yacht had departed Marina del Rey on November 27th and anchored near Catalina Island, despite rough weather. According to accounts, the group dined ashore, drank heavily, and returned to the boat late in the evening. Witnesses later recalled a noticeable shift in mood after they came back on board. Accounts differ, but some described tension and raised voices. What is known is that at some point late that night, Natalie Wood was no longer seen. Hours passed before authorities were notified. Nearby boaters later reported hearing cries for help during the night, though no immediate search followed. When the Coast Guard was finally called, valuable time had been lost. By morning, Natalie's body was recovered and a small dinghy was found nearby. The sequence of events that led her into the water remains unclear. And that uncertainty has never been resolved. Fear of water and lingering questions. Friends and family often spoke of Natalie Wood's deep fear of dark water, something she had mentioned repeatedly throughout her life. Those who knew her said she avoided being alone near the ocean, particularly at night. This detail became central to public doubt about the accident narrative. How did someone with such a fear end up in cold, open water after midnight? Officials suggested she may have slipped while attempting to secure a dinghy, but others questioned whether she would have done so alone. No definitive explanation emerged. The clothing she wore, the distance from the yacht, and the lack of immediate rescue all contributed to ongoing unease. While none of these details prove wrongdoing, together they formed a picture that felt incomplete. For many, the case wasn't about assigning blame, but about understanding what truly happened. A childhood shaped by pressure. Long before tragedy defined her legacy, Natalie Wood's life was marked by intense pressure. Born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko in 1938 to Russian immigrant parents, she entered the film industry at a young age. Her mother believed success was the family's path to security, and Natalie became the focus of that dream. From early childhood, she worked long hours balancing school with demanding film schedules. Directors praised her emotional depth, but behind the scenes, the expectations were relentless. Like many child performers of her era, she grew up quickly, often without the protections now considered essential. While the public saw confidence and charm, those close to her later described exhaustion and anxiety beneath the surface. Her early success came at a cost, shaping a woman who learned to perform through pressure while rarely being allowed to step away from it. Growing up in the spotlight. As Natalie transitioned from child star to leading actress, her fame intensified. Her role in Rebel Without a Cause made her an icon and earned critical acclaim. Yet adulthood in Hollywood brought new challenges. The industry was not gentle, especially to young women navigating power dynamics behind closed doors. In later years, family members would describe experiences Natalie found deeply distressing, accounts that were never pursued publicly during her lifetime. These stories, shared decades later, are presented as personal recollections rather than established facts, but they contribute to understanding her emotional world. Natalie became known for portraying vulnerable characters, women caught between strength and fragility. Those roles resonated because they reflected something real. She learned early that survival in Hollywood often meant silence, endurance, and the ability to keep moving forward regardless of personal cost, love, marriage, and repeated strain. Natalie Wood's personal life unfolded under constant public scrutiny. Her marriage to Robert Wagner made them Hollywood's golden couple, admired and photographed endlessly. Yet, like many relationships shaped by fame, imbalance and pressure followed them. Their first marriage ended in divorce, followed by other relationships and another marriage before Natalie reunited with Wagner years later. Friends later described a bond that mixed affection with tension, familiarity with unresolved conflict. By the late 1970s, Natalie had stepped back from acting, focusing on family life. When she returned to film work, including Brainstorm, new stress entered the marriage. None of this proves wrongdoing, but it provides context. Relationships lived in the spotlight often carry complexities unseen by outsiders. The events of that final weekend cannot be separated from the emotional history that preceded it. Voices that refuse to fade. For years after Natalie Wood's death, her sister Lana Wood questioned the official conclusion. She spoke publicly, wrote books, and asked why key details were never fully examined. Her persistence kept the case alive. In the early 2000s, the yacht's captain gave interviews describing events differently than earlier reports, prompting renewed attention. These accounts were treated cautiously, but they raised enough concern for authorities to take another look. In 2011, investigators reopened the case, citing new information and inconsistencies. A year later, the coroner amended Natalie's death certificate, changing the cause to drowning with undetermined factors. This shift did not assign guilt, but it acknowledged uncertainty. For the first time, official records reflected what many had long felt. The full truth remained unclear. Investigation without conclusions. In 2018, law enforcement publicly stated that Natalie Wood's death was considered suspicious and identified her husband at the time as a person of interest, a legal designation that does not imply guilt. Investigators emphasized inconsistencies between witness accounts and noted the delay in contacting authorities. Despite renewed attention, no charges were filed and the case remains open. Some individuals declined further cooperation, while others maintained earlier statements. From a legal standpoint, the case illustrates how time complicates truth. Memories fade, evidence disappears, and certainty becomes harder to reach. What remains is a collection of accounts, physical details, and unanswered questions. The investigation did not rewrite history, but it changed the narrative from certainty to doubt. That shift alone reshaped how Natalie Wood's final night is remembered. What the mystery ultimately reveals. The enduring mystery of Natalie Wood's death is not only about how she entered the water, but about what her life reveals. Her story reflects an era of Hollywood where image mattered more than safety, and silence was often expected. Whether her death was a tragic accident or something more complex may never be definitively known. What is clear is that unanswered questions deserve space, not dismissal. Natalie Wood remains remembered for her talent, warmth, and emotional honesty on screen. Yet her legacy also invites reflection on how power, fear, and silence shape lives behind the glamour. In the end, this story is less about assigning blame and more about listening carefully, even decades later, to voices that were once overlooked. Some mysteries endure, not because truth is hidden, but because it was never fully heard.